Good evening from Hong Kong. My name is Kelly Ma, and I am the Deputy Director of Parasite. Thank you for tuning in for the first program of the Art and Technology series performing on the cyber stage. At Parasite, we're always looking for new ways to engage with art, and we hope to present the series of programs once a month to examine the intersection of art and technology with artists and scholars around the world. I'm honored to be sharing this conversation with two dear friends, video artist Yu Cheng-Ta and theater scholar Dan Poston, who are joining me from Taipei and Brighton, respectively. Cheng-Ta began his artistic journey very early and eventually started working with video. He uses language and humor to create live theater, forming situations as backdrops to his narratives. In 2017, he started exploring the performativity of gender and identity in mass media and the political function of queer imagination in a world dominated by screens. Dan is a writer and scholar interested in theater and politics in 18th century Britain and North America, with a background in performing and writing performances. He regularly collaborates on musical productions with the Japanese-born artist Ei Arakawa, and many of their works have been performed in museums and institutions around the world. I started thinking about tackling the issue of art and technology in 2015 when I organized an international conference in Hong Kong where Google was one of the sponsors, and their representatives spoke about Google's work in cultural heritage preservation. At the time, conservators and historians continued the age-old debates about differentiating art and documentation in terms of new media art and how rapidly technologies become obsolete. In 2017, I initiated a conversation which touched on the applications of VR in museums for its educational potentials. It was the same year that the artist Jordan Wolfson presented his VR work, Real Violence, at the Whitney Biennial, which led me to consider the point of using VR as an artistic medium that resulted in the discussion in 2018 with artist Ling Yiling on experimenting with VR and with Asia Art Archive on collecting artwork made in such a medium. In 2020, Barbara London, the veteran curator who established a department and collection of time-based media art at MoMA, published Video Art, the First 50 Years, and she launched a podcast series featuring artists working with new media from around the world, including Hong Kong. Last year, we saw the rise and fall of NFTs on the art market, and I felt it was time to talk more in depth about how art crosses paths with technology. As I've written in the description of the series, I want to see technology not as something new. When paper was invented, it really changed the world, even the value system, when the first check was written in the Tang Dynasty, which was called Fei Qian, before the first paper bill in the Song Dynasty, which was called Jiaozi, appeared. Today, we continue to use paper and variations of its concept. Our word processing software, as I typed my talking points, still resembles paper. We say web page and call tablets electronic paper. Its importance permeates through every aspect of our life, even though these renditions are no longer made with plant fibers. There are parts of technologies we use that have become so innate to us that we seldom stop to think about the meaning behind their adaptations. I have invited Dan and Cheng-Ta today to talk about the relationship between performance and identity in a world where more and more of our communication is conducted through screens. Over the last 2 decades or so, we have seen many self-made celebrities who achieved fame and social status, first through reality TV, such as Paris Hilton and the Kardashians, and later through social media, such as Justin Bieber and Cardi B. The former were wealthy to begin with, and they had a capital to create a superficial world of desire for an audience that is directly connected to the products they wish to sell. Whereas the latter became celebrities due to their ability to capture an audience that pushed them from underground status to mainstream. Both groups now rely on social media to continue building their empire through their interaction with their followers to create a faux sense of intimacy, a heavily edited version of themselves to both preserve the mystique and maintain the hype. I would like to first ask Cheng-Ta and Dan to share their work with everyone before we jump into the conversation. And afterwards, we will have time to take questions from the audience. Please share your questions with Parasite via the chat function of Zoom. So Dan, would you mind starting and share with everybody your work?
Yes, thank you, Kelly, for the invitation and the nice introduction. I have just this very minimal presentation here just to introduce myself and how I intersect also with Zhendal's work. So for the last about 10 years, I've been collaborating with A. Arakawa as a lyricist and performer on some art context musicals. And here we are at the Dallas Art Museum performing Jiro digital painting on the stairs to the Africa, Asia, and the Pacific Wing. The performances mixed classical musical form with art world concerns and art world people. So we mixed some local talent with institutional employees, interns, officers, curators, also some art celebrities when we could find them, and also the producing artists. And we also had, of course, these beautiful LED screens, which A made. And here is one with a very talented actress from the Dallas area singing a nice duet together. So that's the LED screen in this production was playing Jiro Yoshihara, the godfather of the Gutai group. And here's another project that we did with no, how to say, living people, organic people. We have some LED reproductions of famous artworks. Here we see Courbet's La Rencontre, the meeting, with 7 other works, or 6 other works, so 7 in total. And that was at the 2017 Münster Sculpture Project. So these are all singing LED screens and in a kind of relational constellation with each other. That was the 2010s, a different time, as we all know. And the latest collaborations we worked on in terms of singing, I had to do with singing coins. And this, of course, was about the question of business in the art world, which is a typical concern of the collaborations and also of A. Arakawa's work. And here we were talking, and I thought this was apropos this conversation perhaps about the question of value and change. So in changing technological times, but also of course as currency itself and the idea of capital is changing all the different forms of capital. So that's my art world work that I've worked on for the last 10 years. And then of course I have this academic research life where I'm concerned about theater history and power and how technologies of power are appropriated by different groups of people, looking historically through time and also through specifically technological change. And so these are some photographs just to track my thinking recently from May 22, so the last month. So I start with this question: what were the origins of modern head of state performance? And then the hypothesis is that technological change allowed more people to appropriate and reperform representations of classical power, whatever that classical is, in turn changing the dominant representations of power. And here we see George Washington in a very performative pose with this classical image there. That's at the Virginia state capitol. And one of my questions is, how is Washington a self-producer, also reappropriating 18th century print, anonymous and public characters that were widely distributed in journals and in anthologies, often with a very classical or neoclassical vein. And of course, here we have Napoleon as emperor, a different kind of classical figure. And then I'm stuck in the UK today. Oh, wait, no. So here's one more important piece, which has to do, of course, with singing. And this is Washington's Dentures, which are displayed in Mount Vernon in the museum there at mouth height. And it's funny because, of course, it's the only authentic relic that we have of Washington. So one of the questions about Washington has always been, even in his own life, what was he really? Who was he really? How could he be represented really? What sort of representation was real? And now it's the dentures that in a way are the most authentic, even though of course they're the most inauthentic. And people say that his silence was partially due to the painfulness of this kind of mouth that needed these prosthetic teeth, which were provided by enslaved people, animals, and of course, technological use of metal and adhesive. And this is just sort of funny from my walk yesterday through Brighton, where I'm stuck unexpectedly. And I thought it nicely captured. It was the least used one of these pop-up faces, so the kids don't really use it, so a little bit. And I think it shows nicely the ambivalence of self-production and fame, and what is fame, this meme. So I'll turn over the microphone now. And thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Jenda, would you mind telling us a little bit about your recent practice?
Yeah.
And Dan, would you mind stop sharing? Great, thank you.
Check. Hello, good evening, everyone. This is Yu Cheng-Ta. I'm trying to, share my project with you in English, but not that good. So I'm a video artist before, so I did a lot of project related to the reality shows. And start from 2019, the invitation from Performativity Biennial, and I create a persona called Famimi. And the project actually is using New York City as a stage to do a performance. And the Famimi project is like a 1 month long durational performance, in New York City. And I create this persona. Famimi, let me check. Let me check. Just a second. There's a problem with my. Oh, right. So Famimi, the name of Famimi actually is combine fan and me, using fan as a verb. And also it sounds cute. So in Chinese, it's Famimi. I always say he is a friend of Fan Bingbing, whatever. Yeah. And how I manipulate this person actually is in 2000, because the project was produced in 2019, and in 2018, there was a really famous movie called Crazy Rich Asian. So for me, actually is one of them. And he has a looks a little bit like Psy, always wears sunglasses, but the color of his dressing are quite different. And he's always hold his family business is the durian business, a very thorny and smelly fruit. And also we can call it as a superfood, which is the truth. So Famimi landed in New York City, want to promote his baby durian. And he has a really strong slogan. It's called, "Don't Google me, just follow me." In one reason is like, there's nothing to Google, but also we use follow as a term from Instagram. It's like you can follow his step, but in a way it's like follow him on Instagram. So a lot of his performance are actually posted through Instagram. And it's interesting because before the biennial started, actually Performa, they have like opening gala and also artist party. And actually they put the sponsor of like this Famimi actually he sponsored the artist party, and it's really fun because I didn't know anybody in the party, and they know, oh, you are the guy sponsored the party. And after that, once we start to do the project in Performa, we set up a museum of durian. Actually, is marking this kind of very famous Instagram museum, and we set up museum in Soho. So you can see actually people just come in and they didn't know who is this guy, but they really enjoy their time in the museum. And in the end of the biennial, actually we did a Times Square reveal. It's like I had 6 Asian backup dancers. Actually, we are shooting music video on Times Square. And I think definitely because of the look of Famimi, and also his personality, and really also about how he looks. And everybody really think he's definitely a superstar from Asia. So Famimi's slogan is always like, "Hi, this is Famimi. I'm from Asia." It's like I manipulate a very funny, or like even you don't really can like directly know where he is from with this accent, and also he didn't address where he is from. So he used Asia from Asia as his slogan. And after the Performa Biennial, actually the COVID came, but in the past 2 years, Famimi still did a lot of different projects. And this is the first project after the Performa Biennial is in Gyeonggi Museum of Modern Art. Famimi actually create a durian exercise room, transform the museum set space into a very interactive space. And also once you get into the space, you have to change the uniform and also participate, or that you can use all the equipment there, and also encourage the audiences to use social media to post. So there were 2 layers of performativity in a way. One is the performativity of the character of the persona through social media. And another strategy was create this kind of idea of creating this kind of Instagram museum actually is encourage them to also perform by themselves, and also through social media, it could also become some kind of virus or more performative, scenes. And in the summer of 2020, Famimi also opened the durian pharmaceutical in Taipei Fine Arts Museum. And that time was very serious. Like every time we are in the danger of the COVID situation, pandemic. And a fictional Famimi was doing like extracting all the good elements from durian because it's so-called keynote fruits. And he produced a contemporary elixir called MST. It's like miso thorny. So it's like a 5 centimeters big pill. Like you can see he holds in his hand. And also he has very big sculpture, and this is some kind of interesting, make a kind of interesting dialogue with what's happening. And also I use a very simple slogan is, once you take this, it can make you smile again. So I think, and also we did MST product briefing at the Taipei Fine Arts Museum. So it's fun. And also, I mean, through Famimi's performance or the space he create, I think this kind of positive energy is really connected with his background, from a very wealthy family. For this kind of celebrity, you always need to talk about sports and healthy. And also, I think these 2 topics also, under the pandemic situation, is also very interesting to make dialogues. And after that, actually in the end of 2020, the project of Famimi started to think about how to engage with the audience, actually not in the institution. It needs to be in the real setting. And this was a performance in Taipei. And I set up a really big, giant, like, how to say that, inflatable durian. And it looks a little bit like virus in a way. And we did a public performance in front of the metro station. And also, we also teach the general public to dance with us. And this is another project. I collaborate with Tinder Taiwan at the LGBTQ Pride in Taiwan in 2020. And so, I mean, I was thinking about like how to deliver the performativity not only in the institution, then the and also in the more like festival or event setting. I think Famimi needs to have another identity, actually how to connect it to the pop culture. And also the song is also might be one of very interesting gesture. So in last year, actually, I worked with another Taiwanese young rapper, and we create a single song called Robert Dub, Charlie's Angel in the Tub. Is a song about taxi driver. And yeah, that was a nice song and make Famimi became a real singer. So you can actually see his music video on YouTube, and you can listen to his song in Spotify. And we are preparing for the next single song this year, and also deliver different performance in different settings. This is also doing this kind of square dance with local ladies, and I also did some kind of teaching in schools. And the newest project is this project called Duty and Duty to be Free. It's like a Famimi's claim in this pandemic situation, everybody should be free. And actually it's some kind of, and this is project actually we did independently, really set up a pop-up store in the real street. It's not really in the museum setting. So also we are curious about how the general public will perceive this shop, because it looks interesting, but you didn't know, once you pass by, you didn't know what he's selling. And once you come in, the performer, they will tell you, oh, this is, so you see the middle of the installation, there is all the documentary Famimi did before. So they were fictional, like, oh, this is a guy called Famimi and his family owns several kind of business. And this is the first time he produced this kind of trendy, he's producing a trendy fashion brand in Taipei. And some of the product actually I produce are related with the previous projects, like from Museum of Durian and also the Durian Pharmaceutical. But also this time we produce one very special hoodie. Is really easy for the people who love Instagram, because in the back, the print, actually once you use the flashlight, it will pop up. So also this hoodie became some kind of performance also through Instagram. And this is a party. And I mean, in the past 2 years, once I started to create Famimi, and due to the COVID, I cannot really go abroad. So I developed different things in Taiwan, and I also get a lot of different resources. And so you could see from 2019 to 2022, there were several kinds of progress of what I was doing, from a fictional setting to intimate reality. And also once he get on the street, is creating the new reality. And once he began he set up his like a branding things, is changing the fiction, and also he is a singer now. So is what I'm thinking, like what will be a very interesting gesture is Famimi actually is improvising with the reality through time. So as I mentioned, I was a video artist. For me, it's the performance projects in a way, but also you could see it as a reality show in a lifetime. And because a lot of projects, we have like different video productions. And this is, for me, is also a newest project because I had an interview by Vogue Taiwan, and actually Yu Cheng-Ta is the writer of his interview in Famimi. Yeah. So it's more or less like what I like to share. So for me, I think Famimi could be is a medium to improvise or making a dialogue with the reality. And also in the future, he could be a media. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Cheng-Ta. So I guess there are several points that we can now dive into as part of our conversation. And the first I wanted to touch on is the part of stereotype and mistaken identity. And if we think about Famimi's first time, his debut, let's put it that way, his debut was in New York City, which as Cheng-Ta mentioned, basically New York City becomes a stage. And it's very fitting because previously the city has also served as a backdrop for artists like Cindy Sherman and Zheng Guanqi in his East Meets West self-portrait series. So both artists perform for the camera, but in the genre of photography. And we can see them as two of the earlier selfie artists who manipulated the perception of their identities through careful choice of costume, background, lighting, and the angle of the camera. In the case of Zheng Guanqi, he discovered that the Mao suit, or Zhongshanzhuang as we say in Chinese, each term referencing a 20th century Chinese political figure, created an opportunity for mistaken identity due to the otherness Zheng represented as an Asian in North America. He realized people often treated him with utmost respect as though he were a dignitary of unspecified Asian origin due to the associations with the suit, and they dared not offend him by inquiring. And I think Cheng-Ta's Famimi obviously plays with this stereotype associated with East and Southeast Asians in North America, where I guess traditionally or at the moment is still majority white. But it's not just in appearance and attire. And as Cheng-Ta mentioned, he also incorporates an accent, and that Famimi never explicitly tell people exactly where he is from. He just says very generically, he's from Asia, to further this ambiguity in the identity. And even in the follow-up projects, as Cheng-Ta presented, say, for example, the Durian Pharmaceutical Company is also cashing out the Orientalism associated with the mystified Chinese medicine and herbs, right, that offers special effects on health and the general desire for physical enhancement in today's culture, which is often adapted and emphasized in influencer culture. So I don't know if either of you have more that you would like to share.
I think it's potentially very interesting to think about these large regional prejudices, especially going across, and stereotypes going across the globalized media environment as a kind of classicism too, which is interesting to reappropriate that. Of course, classicism, in where I'm looking at in the 18th century, had a very positive connotation. So there is a critical function that's built in differently with reappropriating these stereotypes. But I think it's also interesting that this creates a kind of global stage of reappropriating these stereotypes. And I'm very interested in Famimi's work in this sense. also her local, or his, I'm sorry, his local specificity with Times Square as a kind of birthplace and origin.
Yeah. Once I created Famimi, I didn't think about that too much. I know I'm manipulating the stereotype and also give it the exotic feelings, you know, to be what. And I didn't really think about, because I mean, well, no, I didn't think about actually once I came back to Asia, the exotic actually changed. And because, you know, the figure is from Asia, and in Asia, what is more exotic because was that person, Famimi, was on Times Square. It became the value of the report. And actually, I just realized what Famimi was doing is doing exchanges of this kind of exotic value. And yeah. I don't know.
Yeah, no, but I think this is also something we discussed, you know, the three of us discussed, right? And I think that's a good segue into the part where we talked about the global queering identity. So because this in terms of exotic, so first of all, we established that the queer identity is something that is neither there nor here. It itself is about vagueness and ambiguity that doesn't belong to one or the other. And at the same time, you know, as an individual, if a person identifies as queer, it might not be the same as another person who also identifies queer. So there's a lot of individuality in this kind of self-expression, but at the same time, collectively, you know, there's just not a finite way of defining them. So and that this kind of otherness can also be seen, you know, where, for example, when Famimi is not in Asia, and then he's seen as the other because of his Asianness. But when Famimi is in Asia, his otherness comes from the fact that he has achieved a certain you know, accolade of sorts, right, from abroad. And we also Cheng-Ta yesterday referenced the phrase "Pride of Taiwan," like Taiwan Zhiguang, a title given to people who have made certain achievements abroad, which somehow means that they now have obtained more credibility than their peers who didn't. But that doesn't necessarily mean that their peers are inferior to them, right? And another good example in the art world is, say, Takashi Murakami, who, when he started out in Japan, he didn't really achieve a foothold because his use of visual language, such as ukiyo-e and anime characters, seemed commonplace in Japan. But when he went to the US, you know, his otaku and kawaii inspired work really created a frenzy in the market over there for its freshness. And so his international fame then brought him back to Japan. So, you know, so I think this is the queering of this identity and this, you know, freshness of exotifying, or, you know, the mutual exotification is, I guess it's also a part of this post-colonial mentality, right?
Yeah, and Kelly, we had talked about a little bit about this Washington's teeth, in essence, also is this the people who are suffering from an inability to participate in what's the normative social matrix of exchange, often develop a specialty of performing the normative and finding a way through the painful mouth to perform. And I think with Famimi's work, we can see the magnet of these what I'm calling classical roles, pulling someone who might have a very queer kind of background into the center of things. Yeah, I don't know what Famimi's personal. So Famimi, the businessman or the what is Famimi's personal relationship to queerness, or is there one?
One thing for me is like in social media, I mean, everybody is like a split subjects. So this kind of liquefied identity for me as a creator is also so-called this kind of queerness. And also how I mixture his figure and how he performed. This kind of campy style in a way is humor, and also using the humanist way to address or to mark in the reality is so-called this kind of queerness. In a way, I don't really know how to define Famimi's sexuality, because it's interesting, because I did a lot of queer projects. If some of you know that actually before Famimi, I had a sister duo with a Singaporean artist, Ming Wang. And so Famimi is quite different. And there's one day I asked my friend, some of my closest friends, how you think about Famimi's sexuality? But most of them, they think he is asexual, which is very interesting to me, because they know me a lot. And once they see this persona, they strongly feel how he performed is asexual. But for myself, I create his background. He still have his own story, like a love story, but not really directly can out to talk about that. But yeah, and also, I mean, he was from a businessman, and what his mission was to 转型，产业转型怎么说啊？
A shift in the nature of the business.
Yeah, so his mission was like shift the nature of business about durian things. So he started to become more like an influencer or public figure. In this way, it's much easier because I'm too lazy to be an influencer in Asian context, but also he could be a singer, or he could be doing fashion. It's like he's trying to become this kind of more liquefied like jobs, or he could be anything in the future. I don't know. This is something for me is more interesting. Yeah. So I think there are several layers of the queerness, what I'm thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think that that's usually the case with like fictional characters, right? Because even for novelists, they very often say that the character they have created, they should, as a creator, they should know the character the best. But somehow they very often would say in interviews, oh, this character kind of just grown out of hand, like they have a life of their own. And I think in a way, Famimi, has really taken off and has become an independent character.
Yeah, because I always feel like in the past 2 years, I learned more from I mean, I set up a fictional story, but now it's more like the character is leading me to do something actually I don't really know how to do. Even the public are different, the contexts are different, and even industry will be different in the future. So, yeah. So I just don't know how to, but in a way, now we are creating Famimi. I'm not the only one to create his figure. Actually, I always work with lots of people. They have their own mind to think about what Famimi should do, what he should wear. So it's a very interesting imagination of the people I'm working with to build up what he should look like, than just me to control him. Yeah.
Could someone else play Famimi?
I think yes, in the future, everybody should be Famimi. Even I hope I can, I mean, he could be another avatar in the soon future. Yeah, because as you know, I'm not a performer. So the first time I did Famimi is really difficult for me. As I mentioned, actually was a 1 month long performance. But to be honest, the sunglasses helped me a lot, because once I put on the sunglasses or changing the outfit, actually I get the ability to perform. It's like drag culture in a way. Although he is not doing drag, but he owns the power once we change our clothing. So it naturally came out with his accent, how he deal with things, and even this kind of very positive smiles. Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Go ahead. You please.
No, Dan, you go.
I was thinking about this because Kelly was mentioning Cindy Sherman, and I was thinking about this difference, because I do find these projects very similar in a certain way, but of course the demands of video, and especially, I don't even know what we call cyber video in difference. So this live constant media feed with different angles all over the place demands a different kind of absorption. Also, I would presume a different kind of critical space for the artist, maybe not critical, but also independent space for the artist, because when you're performing, for me, it's nice, these sunglasses, but you have to also become absorbed in a different way. We picture Cindy Sherman, maybe she's absorbed, but she's also carefully staging every element for the one photo.
Yeah. So this is, but I mean, for me, or like what I'm thinking, because for me is the person actually, live in social media is not really framed in one specific single imageries. So the speed of producing the imageries or the style of producing the imageries, I also learned from a lot of people like fashion photographers. So, and also for me, the smile could be his performance. It doesn't need to be on Instagram. It could be a huge monitor, like monitors on Times Square. Is how we embodiment the body in different screen interface. I think on this kind of copying things. So I think for me, what I'm doing now is I'm still learning things, because although I know some part of social media, but I'm not really good at that. So it's also making a dialogue, like a conversation with myself. Should I do that or not? And so I think the speed of making the photography, the strategies, or the format of that will be quite different as the past time. Yeah.
Yeah, and because I think, when we were talking about this previously, we also mentioned that, this is the phenomenon of Famimi is similar to a lot of these breakthrough personalities. Dan referenced Lady Gaga, and I brought up Paris Hilton, and because Paris Hilton, especially, she's now doing like basically another reality TV for Netflix, right? And it's very clear that she has even more magnified her dumb blonde image, which is of the extreme, right? And it's also very similar to how Lady Gaga have created the persona, and it's also a very careful manipulation of in terms of fashion to really set themselves apart from the rest of us, right? We lowly common people, and who will probably not wear a meat dress, for example. Yeah, and I think it's also very interesting that it's especially these stars who have such specific styles, and especially for internet celebrities, they tend to have really wide LGBTQ+ following, where perhaps young people find solace and escapism through these outwardly expressive and hyper-fictionalized identity and performance. And I don't know when, I think you recently, Cheng-Ta recently as an artist interacted, with the younger generation. So do you also feel that that's something that they relate to, or?
I also, I don't really feel the same way because I also feel it's interesting because most of these kind of LGBTQ idols, they are female, if we think about in that context. And so Famimi is not really directly doing that, but in the previous 2 years practice, I think he got his new audiences actually are kids. It's really interesting. It's like never think about that. Like I think also because the elements what Famimi use, one is like he's super colorful and use very simple languages and smile all the time. And also in Taiwan, we had like 一些水果哥哥姐姐怎么说啊？
So TV anchors for children's shows, and they're very often named after fruits.
Yeah.
So you will have like Big Brother, I don't know.
Watermelon Big Brother.
Yeah, or
Apple Sister. These kind of things.
Yeah, I think one is 水蜜桃姐姐, right? So like older sister Peach.
So it is also something like some different audience I never expected, and it came out. And in last month, I went to a senior high school to give a talk, and I think the creation of Famimi, although I mean in a talk they know Famimi is be created or invented, and once they know that the project is like that, they feel it's more exciting because also making of some identity or a fictional character is also some part of life they are doing. They could become Annie in the social media posting what her work is, and it could be Sherman in another social medias, and also how they see a lot of like public figure or influencers that no one is talking about. They have been created, although we know all the celebrities like singers are created by a company. You have to follow what your setting is, and so once they knew it's been created by an artist, I think that for a young generation, they feel more excited. And also like for now, because in the beginning of this year, I opened the pop-up store. I got just so many interviews by different medias. And also I think also the time once we talk about inventing Anna or Tinder Swizzle is also connected with how we imagine the people through internet, or he could be acting another persona in the real life to get what they want, and it became an interesting issue. So yeah, so I think it's very contemporary, daily life we have been now. Yeah.
We had talked about this with the analog of print culture and its explosion, at least in the European and American contexts in the 18th century, that what came of that technologically was the possibility of these fictional personas, which were somehow more real and more exciting for people to identify with, often for the first time, because like we said, they were working with certain kind of prescribed modes of behavior that they had to learn in order to participate in public life, which was restrictive, but on the other hand, gave them collectively a chance to see a representative for the first time that expressed their own timeliness. And so it's interesting to see this analog now with today, that on the one hand, we have this notion of the CEO, right, that has ideally a giant team behind and all of these experts and kind of business school somewhere. But of course, this is also then let's say, to use the cliche, neoliberal stress of us all having to perform and create compelling identities, and then some ant or some figures coming in and poking holes and saying, oh, that's not you. We saw you yesterday, you weren't doing that. So still this demand for authenticity in a different way.
Yeah, the authentic self, right? That's what everybody demands, and I think it's also very interesting because I feel like nowadays, because this hyper awareness in terms of class, and even though we don't really talk about it, but it's everywhere we go. And at the same, for example, in Japan, there are fashion magazines that are printed specifically for housewives, so that they have a dress code for every activity that they do. So say if they're going to drop off their children at school, the magazine will suggest to them, this is how you could, put together your, ensemble. And so if you're going to tea with other moms, and this is what you could wear. So, but it somehow becomes also a performance, even though it is your identity as a housewife, but somehow now you have an audience and you have to perform to assimilate, and that is also that is also very interesting, and especially when we're looking at identities in terms of like, if you're like the whole fictional idea of the model immigrant, for example, right? There are all these stereotypes, and when you are part of a certain group, then you feel like you have to perform in order to be to represent your identity. Yeah.
Yeah, the imperative on the artist to be the self producing one, if they're coming, or if there's representing themselves as coming into a scene.
Yeah, and I guess in a way it's also very existentialist, right? Because when I was thinking about this the other day when I was writing my talking points, I was like, oh, it's basically like what Sartre was saying about the cafe waiter, how their cafe waiter's movement around tables and interaction with customers are dictated by his role, but maybe he's doing his job a little bit too deliberately to the point of performance rather than simply carrying out a task, right? And so that's the fictional quality of a performance, that you are, as a performer, you're actively anticipating what your audience expects you to do. And that also tags on to what Zhenda was saying, how now it's basically Famimi driving Zhenda, the artist, to create more activities or narratives for Famimi, now that this fictional character continues to grow, right?
Zhendao, following up on that, you said that the next stage is sort of changing the fiction, I think.
Yeah.
So where are we now with Famimi? Where is Famimi?
I don't know, because in the, how to say that, after this project, I mean, like the Vogue project, I'm planning a lot of different projects, and also there's something is related to the metaverse. I'm still learning how to build up that, and also in the future, I'm going to collaborate with another big companies, and to develop different dialogues in the future. And also, Famimi could be the person, because also I think everything is changing. In the beginning, he is a person wears sunglasses holding durian. No one knows what's his name. He could be Sai, he could be a TV host. And since he started to like develop doing his performance in the real time, people still thinking about yeah, he is the one with durian. But last year, I think everybody knows these three characters already, Famimi. So he doesn't need to talk about, actually, he is the one with, he's promoting durian. He is the one as the whole imageries. And also these days, we are developing his 3D avatars, because he's setting up so many layers of design. Like this is Famimi. This is Famimi. It's a durian. This could be Famimi, the present of the Famimi. And in the future, he could be an avatar of something in the metaverse. So I'm still thinking about how to, developing all these designs or the frame of the structure of displaying the concepts. I mean, now is more interesting for me. And also, because in Taiwan is also like, using art as something to collaborate with other industries, very rare, but start to get it more and more now. I think it's also what Famimi did before is also gradually changing something, in the culture part is what I'm working on. And also personally, for me, it's also very difficult to divide it myself with Famimi. So as I mentioned, what should I do, because, and now I'm planning to become his boss. I mean, Cheng-Ta is going to become his boss. I'm setting up a company for him. It's promoting Famimi as an intelligent property. So which is make more logically the structure of what I'm doing and what his mission. So it's very structured. So yeah, it's what I am planning. It's so difficult.
As a theater historian, of course, I'm interested in the drama of will this character accept a boss? This boss character. This will be interesting to see how this plays.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm imagining, Famimi having grown up in a very specific environment, maybe he sounds actually pretty docile in the interview. So, but quite obedient. For the most part, sounds like your typical obedient child in an Asian family, just that he may have these alternative thinking towards the family business.
Yeah, I think, and we should collaborate with a musical in the future. I really want to do something in like opera house. I mean, Famimi really want to do something in an opera house in an alternative way.
I can definitely see that.
That's great. So we're at 7 p.m. in Hong Kong and Taipei, and I don't see any questions from the audience, but I feel like we have, adequately explored a lot of these different avenues in terms of, how performance and identity has really developed, in the I guess in the last 10 years. Let's say 10 years, but after social media has become so dominant. And yesterday, Cheng-Ta also mentioned that now everybody has a stage. Your stage is your phone, and that really also changes the way we act as just normal human beings. It's now, obviously, even us having a Zoom panel discussion is almost as though that we are a YouTuber. Right. So yeah. Ooh, there is one question from the audience. So one of our audience members would like Dan to speak more about George Washington's denture.
Well, I'm writing about that, so I don't know what to say, but I found it very striking. The exhibit that they have right now in Mount Vernon, they're changing this every 5 years, and I was just visiting in May for my research, and the dentures, of course, are prominently displayed in the American mythos. These are wooden dentures, and everyone knows about George Washington's teeth, but you don't really analyze it. It's just one of these myths that you pass on, and so it's very striking then to come across suddenly in an exhibit that is emphasizing over and over again George Washington's artistic constructedness, self-constructedness, but also the agendas of various artists. So, it's a very post-subjective George Washington that's on display. And then suddenly you come across these dentures, which have these golden pyramids holding them up, and they're at your mouth level. So there's lots of photos you can find of people putting themselves, in the place of the mouth. And I'm of course interested in, and we didn't really touch on this, but we were also thinking about famimi and also artistic projects that become official political representation. And so George Washington's teeth, of course, signify his famous ineloquence, which was somehow a very effective way of becoming a projection pane for other people to fantasize that this would be the essential person, the essential body that would create the changes that they wanted. So that's what I was thinking about there. This kind of, yeah.
Yeah. Does that necessarily make somebody like George Washington more relatable, or do you think but that makes him more human, or do you think that makes people actually doubt that the founding fathers were necessarily who we thought they were when we were taught in our textbooks?
I think definitely the dialectic, so this going between these two possibilities is the interesting part, that the having an artificial mouth in essence created interest, a certain kind of charisma that people could become fascinated, but it also created, for the subject, George Washington himself, the performative subject, a discipline, which then also made him a compelling performer. We talked about other examples, Kelly, in the conversations before this event about, for instance, other presidential examples, but there are lots of other examples when you look into the background of famous actors or public performers in general, where they're overcoming something that they feel and experience as non-normative, and they overperform the normative, and this becomes a compelling performance type.
Yeah, I think we definitely talked about how FDR, trying to, well, it's very well known that he has disabilities, but he definitely tries to make it less of an issue in his public image, and that in itself is also, I guess, it's commendable, because I don't know how much pain that would inflict on somebody, but to help people think that they are capable leaders, and to help people believe that this is the person we can follow through hardship for a country, right? So, which we're also seeing going on as we have a war. So
yeah, we have this Ukrainian president who was trained as an actor, playing the Ukrainian president.
Indeed. Yeah. Senda, do you have questions for Dan?
Yeah, I'm really interested in, because I checked the website today, the opera thing in which museum? The Berlin Biennial? Yeah, because
how to disappear in America. Yes.
Yeah. I think it's very interesting, and also how to say that that kind of form is like 有点像腹语. It's like
it's
ventriloquists.
Yeah, ventriloquist. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we called it a kind of karaoke musical, but actually it was somehow reversed because we weren't singing. Indeed, we were just ventriloquizing. So we pre-recorded the voices.
I'm really into that kind of format. It's like this kind of like a performative format. Yeah.
Yeah, it helps. It helps too because when you perform it over and over again, of course you get quite good at lip syncing. Which allows you then to kind of embody the role differently. And we had a in difference from Famimi's performances, which are, as we saw, very, very close, and this new branding type of performance where you're interacting directly. We had a stage, so we were a little bit separated. So people also didn't know we were lip syncing.
Because I really into that. Because you are lip syncing, but also you are some of the performers, they are looking at the lyrics at the same time, but also try to perform naturally. So this is some kind of shooting structure for me. Yeah, it's like
this kind of divided attention subjectivity. This of course reading the role helped as a prop.
Yeah, but that also, that's actually very similar to how, the production of pop culture is very similar. It's how people make music videos. They're all lip syncing in the music videos. And I also remember the 2004 scandal on Saturday Night Live, where Ashley Simpson lip synced, and it became a huge scandal because the show is called Saturday Night Live, so you presume everybody is performing live, except only the singer is lip syncing. The live band is still playing live. So, yeah.
This is so in my academic field, theater studies has been one of the, I guess for the last 2 decades, one of these quintessential debates about liveness. Is there such a thing as liveness? And one of the poles of debate says that we've now entered a stage where liveness, so the performances, and I thought this was very much what Cheng-Ta was talking about with Famimi's performances, that they authenticate Famimi's existence. So Famimi is real because Famimi appears, that people can touch, like an old saint or something that visits the village. But that the reality actually is that is authenticated is the reality online.
And also the reality could be aided because now for the social media, it's like you can select what you want to expose or what you want them to see. So it could be, and some of my friends, they told me actually, how do you know how the influencers, they document their life? Actually, they just do one shoot in a week. So from morning to the evening, they will go different places, wear different costumes, and they can post one pose a day. Everything is set and everything is edited because they are performing that persona in a way. And also, it's quite interesting.
It's economical.
It's economical,
for everybody. And I mean, even Oprah Winfrey, who is not necessarily an influencer, she has her own magazine. That's how she shoots her magazine covers. She shoots all of them, say like a whole year's worth in one day. Yeah. So
could I ask, have you ever sliced into the durian?
You mean slice? Yeah. Have you tried durian before?
I have, yeah. I mean, for Mimi, because I find this surface of the durian so interesting in Famimi's performances.
Yeah. So what's the question again?
Have you ever sliced into your baby durian?
Oh, not my baby durian, but
the actual fruit.
Actual fruit. Yes. I'm thinking about the avatar I'm going to do. It should be this kind of durian or a slice of durian. I'm still not sure. or they could be a family, like family, like I don't know, durian families. Okay, they will have different characters. I don't know.
Oh, that would be a really good reference to Nam Junpei's robot family, where he has like the TV robots and they have family, like, yeah. So
Wow.
Okay. I think we're at a good time, and I mean, I would really like us to continue this conversation, but just trying to make sure that we are also allowing everyone to have, you know, adequate for time for the rest of their evening. So it has been a true pleasure to, you know, share this conversation with both of you. Thank you so much for joining me and unpacking the fascinating world of fanmimi, performance and identity, 18th century politicians and theater. So a little bit of a public announcement. So next week on Thursday, June 9th, we have a PS paid studio visit with artist Yao Kwok Kon, whose work roots from his tattoo practice. And the program is hosted by our project manager and assistant curator Kobe Ko in Cantonese. And also next week on Saturday, June 11th, we will have in-person programming, including open studio with our Studio Plus archive artists in residence, Jeff Chung and Hugh Wali, and a silk screen print workshop with artist Eastman Chung, part of our current exhibition, Mining the Grasp, organized by our curator, Celia Ho. So you can find more information of these activities on our website. And I usually like to end with a quote, and in response to today's theme, I was able to find a 1989 Nam Junpei quote to end. He said, "Skin has become inadequate in interfacing with reality. Technology has become the body's new membrane of existence." So on that note, thank you very much for joining again. Have a nice Tonam Festival long weekend. 端午节快乐. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.